Bill Hickok hides behind a curtain with a loaded Navy Colt as the Wellmans wait in the station, unable to pay David McCanles and unwilling to come out at his command. Hickok has had enough of McCanles' bullying, and the thing that McCanles doesn't know about the stock tender, who will one day be known as Wild Bill, he doesn't stand down when cornered, and he doesn't miss a shot, ever. On this episode of Dead Man's Hand, the Wild Bill Project, we begin unpacking the most perplexing gunfight outside of Tombstone, Arizona, the McCanles Massacre, and take a look at how an excessive display of violence by Hickok became known as the heroic advent of the West's most famous gunfighter. This is Dead Man's Hand, the McCanles Massacre Part 1, Tall Tales. Wild Bill Hickok was more than just a gunslinger. He was a master marksman, a fearless lawman, and a scout for the Army during and after the Civil War. His piercing blue eyes, long flowing hair, signature handlebar mustache, and towering height of over 6 feet made him a distinctive figure in any crowd, and he refused to fit stereotypes, proving to be a walking contradiction. He could go for weeks scouting, hunting, fighting local tribes, and living off the land clad in buckskins like Daniel Boone. But when in town, he adorned himself in a Prince Albert coat, a red sash, and a pair of ivory-handled Colt revolvers sticking out. He was well-groomed and never missed a daily bath. He avoided attention and spared his words for those moments when they were required, and was rarely the cause of trouble himself, even when drinking whiskey, which he consumed a lot of. On the other hand, Hickok loved to tell stories of his exploits, exaggerating if he could make them better, and looked like a dandy when he strutted up and down the streets he patrolled. He was a man of honor and moral dignity, someone who loved children and protected the innocent, even throwing his former employee into a canal when he mistreated a mule. But on the other hand, Hickok was a cold-blooded killer, even if his killings were in self-defense or in defense of the greater good. No one knows how many men he killed during the Civil War or the Indian Wars of the Great Plains, but he is documented killing at least 6 or 7 men in shootouts. When it came to killing that he found necessary, Hickok did not hesitate, and he rarely questioned his judgment. The McCanles Massacre, like many events in Old West history, is shrouded in myth and conflicting accounts. Differing views about what happened during the gunfight at Rock Creek Station stem from various sources, including eyewitness testimonies, historical records, and the evolving legend of Wild Bill Hickok. We do know the facts, however. 3 men and a boy came to collect money from a station manager, who is currently employing Bill Hickok. After failed negotiations, 3 of the men were shot and killed, 2 of them brutally. There are only 2 instances of violence where Wild Bill later on in life grew quiet, plagued by the thoughts of guilt or regret. One instance was the gunfight with Phil Coe, where he accidentally and tragically shot and killed his deputy and friend Mike Williams. The other was the McCanles Massacre. Hickok is quoted as saying, "I don't like to talk about that McCanles affair. It gives me a queer shiver when I think of it, and sometimes I dream about it and wake up in a cold sweat." Before this grave recollection, perhaps owing to a conscience troubled by several more men killed at his hand as a lawman, Hickok used to tell about the killing of David McCanles and his associates with the ease and flair of a gifted, if not reluctant, storyteller predisposed to exaggeration. One eager listener was Colonel George Ward Nichols, a young reporter from Harper's Weekly who came west to build his career as a writer and journalist by bringing the West to life for readers back east. He came to know Wild Bill and appeared eager to record the lawman's barroom version of stories as fact, or at least ride his coattails of heroism to journalistic stardom, and published his article in February of 1867. Among Hickok's many exploits recorded in this article, Hickok shares the story of the McCanles killings. According to this version of the story, Hickok had just finished guiding a cavalry detachment near Nebraska when he decided to stop by and see his old friends, the Wellmans. When he entered the modest cabin, Mrs. Wellman greeted Bill in a panic. She told him that the murderous McCanles gang was in the area and that she had just seen with her own eyes the gang abusing the local preacher, Parson Shipley by putting him in a noose and dragging him nearly to death. Mrs. Wellman had no sooner finished sharing this alarming news when 10 armed men showed up outside on horses, a bloodthirsty group of horse thieves and devils, of which David McCanles was the brutal ringleader. McCanles called to his men, "Surround the cabin and give no quarter to that Yank." Mrs. Wellman begged Hickok to intercede and pointed to a rifle hanging in their bedroom. According to the article, Hickok yelled out to McCanles, "Come on in here, you cowardly dog. Come in here and fight me." McCanles was no coward, said Hickok. He jumped inside the room with his gun, leveled to shoot, but he was not quick enough. My rifle ball went through his heart. He fell back outside the house, where he was found afterward, holding tight to his rifle. The other 9 men entered the cabin, and Bill was forced to fend them off with no more than 6 shots at his disposal. After dispatching 2 men as they entered, the swarm of brutes overwhelmed Hickok with their numbers, shooting him twice with birdshot, pummeling him in the chest with the butt of a shotgun, and wrapping him up by the throat until blood flowed from his chest, arms, and face. "Then I got ugly," said Hickok, "and I remember that I got hold of a knife, and it was all cloudy like, and I was wild, and I struck savage blows, following the devils up one side of the room to the other and into the corners, striking and slashing until I knew that everyone was dead." In this exaggerated, if not fictional account of the event, there is no mention of various facts that we know to be true, including the presence of McCanles' 12-year-old son, Monroe, as well as the number of men involved, which was 3, not including the boy, not 10. This version of the story, like any tall tale, was meant to sensationalize the christening event of a gunfighter's famed life, portraying Hickok as the sole hero up against evil men and impossible odds. It is not a surprise, because this Harper's Weekly article written by Nichols was credited along with a follow-up article by Henry M. Stanley for the New York Herald for making Wild Bill Hickok famous coast to coast. Author and historian Tom Clavin says that these 2 articles, with their sensational telling of events, like the McCanles affair, created an image of Hickok as a, quote, handsome, chivalrous, yet cold-eyed killer who roamed the prairie, a kind friend to children, and a quick-drawing punisher of evildoers, end quote. Hickok would subsequently become the subject of countless dime store novels. Nichols' career, on the other hand, suffered a very different fate. His choice to indulge Hickok's tall tales without consulting other sources or witnesses led to wide-scale criticism from the journalistic community, a criticism that ironically shot down his dreams of becoming a respected writer and reporter. Since we know Hickok's initial version of the McCanles massacre was not accurate, what actually happened? Why did this gunfight bother him so much later on in life? What was his motive to kill 3 otherwise peaceful citizens? And why didn't this one-sided killing, without a clear motive, tarnish Hickok's legend? Furthermore, why is there so little clarity about this formative event in the life of the Wild West's most important lawman and gunfighter? Part of the problem is there are so many conflicting narratives of the event and the volatile personalities involved. On one hand, you have Hickok, who, by the time the McCanles massacre became public knowledge, was on his way to becoming a folk hero in the eyes of a public captivated by the frontier and its unique version of heroism and rugged individualism. The media and the public gave him a free pass. No one was interested in the truth at the time, and the facts gathered dust with little follow-up inquiries, leaving a perplexing event's loose ends frayed. As a result, many historians, including Joseph Rosa, agree that, quote, no single event, with the possible exception of the Earp Clanton fight in Tombstone, Arizona, has caused so much controversy as the Hickok-McCanles affair at Rock Creek. Will another look at the facts, eyewitness accounts, and expert analysis from historians bring us any closer to the truth about what happened that day, July 1861? In the next episode of Deadman's Hand, the Wild Bill Project, we examine each of the people involved in this bloody affair, and I think you'll agree that the truth of what happened, like all history, will be based on who you believe.